So this whole thing still doesn't feel real even though it happened like 3 weeks ago. I stood up in front of maybe 200 people at a community centre and basically destroyed my wife's entire life with a manila folder full of medical records. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to back up because the context matters. Like a lot. I'm David. I'm 34. My wife Kristen is 32. Or was my wife, I guess. I don't even know what to call her anymore. We'd been together since college, married for 8 years. And honestly, it was pretty good. I mean, we had normal stuff. Arguments about dishes and money and whatever, but nothing major. She worked in marketing for this tech startup and I was doing project management at a construction firm. We had a house in the suburbs, talked about kids eventually, the whole thing. Then about 14 months ago, everything changed. Kristen sat me down one night and told me she had breast cancer. Stage 2. She'd found a lump, got it checked. Biopsy came back positive. She was crying. I was crying. It was this whole devastating thing. And look, my mum died of breast cancer when I was 20, so this hit different for me. Like really, really different. I basically went into full panic mode immediately. She said she'd already talked to an oncologist and had a treatment plan. Aggressive chemo, possible surgery, radiation, the works. The doctor was at this private practice about an hour away because apparently they specialised in her specific type. I asked to come to appointments and she said no, she needed to process this on her own first. She'd let me come later. Which I thought was weird, but I didn't push because I figured everyone handles this stuff differently. Here's where I made my first massive mistake. I believed everything she said without question. Because why wouldn't I? Who fakes cancer? Like what kind of person does that? She started doing these trips for treatment, usually gone for a day or two at a time. She'd come back looking tired and we'd talk about the side effects and how hard it was. She shaved her head after the second round of chemo, which I thought was strange timing, but again, what did I know? I wasn't a doctor. She said the hair loss hit her early. And here's the financial anchor part that makes this all so much worse. About 4 months into her treatment, Kristen came to me and said the insurance wasn't covering as much as we thought. We needed about $80,000 for this experimental treatment that could really help her chances. I didn't even hesitate. I took out a second mortgage on our house. I mean, what was I supposed to do, let my wife die to save money? The house we'd paid off half of was suddenly drowning in debt, but I figured we'd deal with it after she was healthy. Then 2 months after that, she convinced me to quit my job. She said she needed me home more for emotional support, to drive her to appointments, to take care of her on bad days, and I felt so guilty because I'd been working long hours and not being there enough. So I quit, started doing freelance project management from home, which paid way less, but gave me flexibility. My little sister Emma was living with us during all this. She's 26 and had been going through a rough patch, broke up with her boyfriend, lost her job, the usual mid-20s crisis stuff. She moved into our spare room around the same time Kristen got diagnosed, and honestly, I think Kristen used that to her advantage from day one, but I didn't see it happening. Emma completely bought into the cancer story. She started going to supposed appointments with Kristen sometimes when I couldn't. She helped organise meals, did research on treatment options, the whole supportive sister-in-law thing, and Kristen just ate it up. They got really close during this time. Closer than Emma and I were, honestly, which kind of hurt, but I figured it was a girl bonding thing or whatever. What I didn't realise was that Kristen was actively poisoning Emma against me. Like systematically. It started small. Emma would make these comments about how I wasn't being supportive enough, how I should be doing more around the house since Kristen was fighting for her life, how I seemed distant and cold sometimes. And I'd try to explain that I was doing everything I could, but Emma would just get defensive and say, I was making it about me when Kristen was the one suffering. Then it got worse. Emma started implying that I was being financially controlling, that I was questioning the treatment costs too much, that I was more worried about money than my wife's life, which was completely insane because I'd literally mortgaged our future to pay for treatments. I'd quit my job. What more could I possibly do? But every time I tried to defend myself, Emma would shut me down. She'd say Kristen had confided in her about how unsupported she felt, how I made her feel like a burden, how sometimes she wondered if I even wanted her to get better. I was losing my mind. I started second-guessing everything I did. Was I being supportive enough? Was I being too pushy about finances? I felt like I was going crazy. Meanwhile, Kristen's cancer became this whole community thing. She started a blog about her journey. She posted on social media about fighting and staying positive. Her co-worker Natalie organised a meal train for us. People from our neighbourhood started sending cards and gift baskets. It snowballed into this massive outpouring of support, and then Natalie came up with the idea for a fundraiser, a big charity event to help with our medical costs and also raise awareness for breast cancer research. She contacted the local community centre, got donations for a silent auction, organised the whole thing. It was set for a Saturday night about 6 weeks from when she planned it. Kristen was so excited about it. She kept talking about how meaningful it was that people cared this much, how she wanted to use her platform to help others. I remember thinking how brave she was being, how amazing it was that she could turn this horrible situation into something positive. I had no idea she was vacationing in Turks and Caicos with some guy named Matthew while supposedly getting chemo. The discovery happened kind of by accident. I was doing laundry one day, maybe 2 months ago now, and I found this receipt in Kristen's jeans pocket. It was from a restaurant I'd never heard of. I googled it and it was in Charlotte, which was weird because she told me she had treatment in the opposite direction. I didn't think too much of it at first. Maybe she'd stopped there on the way back or something. But then I found another receipt from a different day from a hotel in Charlotte, and this uncomfortable feeling started growing in my stomach. I started paying more attention to the dates. Kristen would tell me she had treatment on a Tuesday. I'd check our credit card statements, and there'd be charges from restaurants and stores nowhere near where her supposed oncologist was. Different cities entirely. This went on for like 3 weeks where I was just gathering information and trying to make sense of it. I felt like such an asshole for even suspecting anything. Like, what kind of husband doesn't trust his wife who has cancer? Emma actually caught me looking through credit card statements one day and completely lost it on me. She said I was being controlling and paranoid, that I was trying to catch Kristen in some kind of lie about her cancer, which was absolutely disgusting behaviour, that I should be ashamed of myself. I almost stopped right there, almost convinced myself I was losing it and seeing patterns that weren't there. But then I found the photos. Kristen had this old iPad she barely used anymore. I needed to look something up and my phone was dead, so I grabbed it. She was logged into Instagram on it, and I saw a DM notification pop up from some account I didn't recognise. I know, I shouldn't have looked, but I did. It was a guy named Matthew. The messages went back months, and they were not subtle. Lots of hearts and kiss emojis and talking about missing each other, plans to meet up. And then I scrolled back further and found photos he'd sent her. Beach photos, resort photos, the two of them together, her wearing a bathing suit and sunglasses and very clearly having a full head of hair under a beach hat. The geotag said Turks and Caicos. The date was from 3 weeks ago, when she'd supposedly been getting a particularly difficult round of chemo. I literally sat on the bathroom floor and stared at these photos for maybe an hour. I couldn't process it. My brain just wouldn't accept what I was seeing. She'd been taking these treatment trips and going on vacation with this guy. The whole thing was fake. All of it. But I still didn't understand the full scope. I thought maybe she was just cheating and lying about where she was. Maybe she actually had cancer and was just also having an affair, which would be horrible. But at least the cancer part would be real. I started digging more. I went through her email on that iPad, found confirmations for flights and hotels and resort bookings. All on days she said she had treatment, all paid for with money from our second mortgage. Money I'd borrowed against our house to save her life. She'd been using cancer treatment funds to vacation with her affair partner. The full weight of it hit me, and I actually threw up. Right there on the bathroom floor, I just got sick. But I still needed proof about the cancer itself, because maybe she had it, and was just a horrible person who was also cheating. I needed to know for sure. I remembered the name of the private practice she'd told me about when this all started. The oncologist she was supposedly seeing. I called them. Pretended to be following up on a billing question. They had no record of any patient named Kristen under our insurance, or as a private pay patient. I called the hospital she said she'd gotten her biopsy at. Same thing, no record. I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. None of this could be real. I thought about confronting her directly, but I knew she'd just deny everything. She'd gaslight me. She'd probably convince Emma I was having a breakdown and turn my own sister even more against me. I needed actual proof, medical proof. So I did something maybe illegal. I don't know. I don't even care at this point. I knew Kristen's social security number and birth date and all that. I requested her medical records from her regular primary care doctor, the one she'd seen for years before the supposed cancer. Forged her signature on the release form. It took about a week, but they sent them to my email. I went through every single page. Routine checkups, some minor stuff here and there. Nothing about cancer, no referrals to oncologists, no biopsy orders, nothing. The most recent visit was from about 2 months before she told me she had cancer. Clean bill of health. Literally, the doctor had written that everything looked great and to come back in a year. She'd invented the entire thing. I spent about 3 days just kind of walking around the house in a daze. Emma kept asking if I was okay, and I'd just say I was tired. Kristen was being extra affectionate, which made me feel physically ill. She kept talking about the upcoming fundraiser and how excited she was and how grateful she felt for everyone's support. I realized Emma had no idea. Kristen had been using her to make the lie more convincing. She'd been manipulating my sister, who just wanted to help and support family. Emma thought she was going to appointments with Kristen, but I'd bet anything they were just going shopping or to lunch or whatever, while Kristen spun stories about treatment. About a week before the fundraiser, I made my decision. I was going to let the event happen, let all those people show up, let Kristen stand up there and give her brave cancer warrior speech, and then I was going to burn her entire world down in front of everyone. I spent that week getting everything organized. I made copies of the medical records. I printed out screenshots of the messages with Matthew and the vacation photos. I put together a timeline of her supposed treatment dates versus the actual dates she was traveling with him. Bank statements showing the resort charges, flight confirmations, all of it. I put everything in a manila folder. Didn't tell anyone. Emma was running around helping Natalie with last-minute fundraiser details and kept asking me to be more involved, and I just said I'd be there on the night. The day of the event, I was honestly shaking. I almost chickened out like 5 times. But then I'd remember the second mortgage, my job, my sister being manipulated, all those people donating money to a fake cancer patient, and I'd get angry all over again. The fundraiser was at the community centre downtown. It was actually really nice. Natalie had done an amazing job. Maybe 200 people showed up, silent auction items on tables, a whole photo display of Kristen's journey that made me want to scream, banners about fighting cancer. Kristen was wearing this gorgeous dress and makeup and her wig styled all perfect, playing the part. Emma was next to her being supportive and giving me these disappointed looks every time I didn't seem enthusiastic enough. Everyone was eating and bidding on stuff, and then Natalie got up on the little stage they'd set up. She gave this whole speech about Kristen's bravery and strength, about how inspiring she was, about the importance of supporting cancer research. Everyone was crying. Emma was crying. Kristen was crying. I waited. I sat at our table with my folder and I just waited. Then Natalie called Kristen up to say a few words. She got up there and started her speech, talking about how hard the journey had been, how she couldn't have done it without the support of her community, how grateful she was, how every day was a battle but she was fighting and staying positive. I stood up and started walking toward the stage. People were looking at me like I was being rude for moving around during her speech. Emma hissed at me to sit down. I ignored her. I got to the stage and just walked right up there. Kristen stopped mid-sentence and looked confused. I took the microphone from her hand. My voice was shaking when I started talking. I said something like, "I need to tell everyone something. Kristen doesn't have cancer. She never had cancer. She's been lying to all of us for over a year." The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Kristen immediately went into this performance. She looked shocked and hurt and started saying I was having some kind of episode, that the stress of everything had gotten to me, that someone needed to help me, and I could see people starting to look at me like I was crazy. So I opened the folder, I held up the medical records, I explained what they were, I said her doctor confirmed she had no cancer, no referrals, nothing. I asked Kristen if she wanted to explain that. She started saying those records were wrong. There must be some mistake. She'd been going to a private specialist. So I pulled out the phone records showing calls to the specialist office. Showed that they had no record of her as a patient either. Then I pulled out the vacation photos, the ones with Matthew on the beach. On the dates she said she was getting chemo. I described what we'd found in the messages, the affair, the resort bookings paid for with medical fundraising money. People were gasping. Someone shouted something about calling the police. Natalie looked like she was going to faint. Emma pushed through the crowd and got up on stage. She was yelling at me, saying I was a liar, that I'd fabricated all of this because I was jealous of the attention Kristen was getting, that I'd always been unsupportive, that Kristen had told her everything about my behaviour, and that's when I realised I needed to show Emma too. I turned to her and I just asked her straight up what appointments she'd actually gone to with Kristen, where they'd gone, what they'd done. Emma described going to get coffee one day before a supposed treatment, going shopping another time. Kristen had told her the appointments got cancelled or rescheduled last minute, but that it meant a lot Emma had come anyway. I showed her the bank records from those exact dates, charges at those same coffee shops and stores, no hospital charges, no pharmacy charges, nothing medical at all. I watched my sister's face just completely crumble as she understood. Kristen had been using her as a prop, someone to occasionally bring along to make the story more believable, someone who could vouch that she'd been going places on treatment days without actually ever going to real appointments. Emma looked at Kristen and asked if it was true, and Kristen just stood there. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. The evidence was too clear. Someone in the crowd said they were calling the police for fraud. Natalie was already on her phone. People were starting to shout. Some were demanding their donations back. Others were just staring in shock. Kristen tried to leave the stage and someone blocked her. She started crying. Real crying this time, and saying she'd made mistakes, but everyone makes mistakes and she deserved forgiveness. That she'd been planning to tell the truth eventually, that things had just spiraled out of control. I asked her about Matthew, asked how long the affair had been going on. She wouldn't answer, so I told everyone myself. Based on the messages, at least 15 months. Started right around when she'd announced the cancer. The whole thing had been a cover story for the affair and an easy way to get money. The police showed up maybe 20 minutes later. I gave them copies of everything. They talked to Kristen. They talked to people who donated. The whole fundraiser basically turned into a crime scene. It was chaos. Emma came up to me at some point during all of it. She was crying so hard she could barely talk. She kept apologizing for not believing me, for defending Kristen, for all the things she'd said. I told her it wasn't her fault. Kristen had manipulated both of us. That was what she did. I left before everything was fully wrapped up. I couldn't stand to be there anymore. I went home and just sat in our living room staring at the wall. Emma came home a few hours later, and we just sat together not really talking. Kristen didn't come home that night, or the next night. I later found out she'd gone to stay with Natalie's sister or something. I don't really know the details and I don't care. The police ended up charging her with fraud and theft. Apparently faking cancer to get money is illegal. Who knew? I filed for divorce the next week. The lawyer said it would be pretty straightforward given the circumstances. So here's an update since people were asking what happened after. Emma moved out about a week after the fundraiser. Not because things were bad between us, but because she said she needed her own space to process everything. We talk almost every day now, though. She's in therapy trying to work through the manipulation stuff, which I think is really good for her. Kristen tried to call me a bunch of times from different numbers. I blocked all of them. Her lawyer contacted my lawyer with some kind of settlement offer, but I told him to pound sand. I want her to have as little as legally possible from this divorce. The community centre ended up refunding everyone who donated to the fundraiser. I guess they had some kind of insurance that covered it or something. People lost money on the silent auction stuff though, which sucks, but there wasn't really a way to fix that. Matthew apparently dumped Kristen the second the scandal broke. Shocker. He wanted nothing to do with the legal mess. Last I heard through the grapevine, she's living with her mum in another state and working retail or something. The fraud charges are still pending, but it's probably going to end up being a plea deal with probation and restitution. I'm working on rebuilding my finances. The second mortgage is still there and it's going to take years to dig out of that hole, but I'm trying. I got a new job last month, back in project management. Pays better than the freelance stuff anyway. Some people from our old social circle still won't talk to me. I think they feel embarrassed they didn't see through Kristen's lies or something. Like they're mad at themselves, so they're avoiding me by association. Whatever. I don't really care anymore. The weirdest part is sometimes I still can't fully believe it happened. Like my brain wants to reject it. But then I'll remember standing on that stage with the folder and watching her face when she realized I actually had proof. And I know it was real. I don't regret exposing her the way I did. Maybe some people think it was cruel to do it publicly like that, but honestly, she deserved it. She stole money from good people who wanted to help someone with cancer. She manipulated my sister. She destroyed our finances. She faked one of the worst diseases out there for sympathy and cash, and to cover up an affair. The public humiliation was the least of what she deserved.